The Lauries are back. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a few weeks ago, my wife gave birth to our very first baby girl. She's in the back in pink. Look, don't touch. Quick story. So a few weeks before she was born, a bunch of weeks before she was born, Elsa and I attended an event together. We were all dressed up. We took a picture at this event. And after we got home, I was looking at the picture. And I noticed, wow, I have gained some noticeable sympathy weight over the past few months. And I didn't like that very much. So I said, okay, I'm going to clean up my diet a little bit. I'm going to be consistent in the gym, see if I can get back into a little bit better shape. And it started going pretty well for a few weeks. First few weeks, I lost a few pounds. And then fast forward to a couple weeks before Elsa's due date, I remember I was having a conversation with Elsa, and I was feeling good about this whole thing. And I remember saying to her, like, hey, when the baby comes, I really want to prioritize being consistent with this diet, eating clean and continuing to get into better shape. And she was really supportive. She was like, oh, yeah, you can do it. That sounds awesome. Fast forward a couple weeks. It's the week before her due date. And again, a conversation came up, and I remember saying, again, it's really important to me. I want to keep eating clean. When we go to the hospital, when we come home, I want to get back to the gym pretty quickly. And I remember thinking to myself, as a brand new dad, that's something that's going to be really important to me, is eating clean, is taking care of my physical health and fitness. Fast forward to the end of the week, it's Saturday. Elsa is showing signs of early labor. So we call the hospital up, and the doctors say, okay, based on what you're telling us, wait at home for a few hours and then come in the afternoon, and we'll do some tests and see what's going on. So we wait at home for the morning. I have my healthy breakfast that I have every morning. Couple eggs, little chicken sausage. I have at noon my chicken salad for lunch. I'm feeling good. We're rocking and rolling. We go to the hospital to have this baby. When we get there, they run a couple tests to verify, like, yep, she is in labor. You're having this baby today. You're not going home. And when they said that, my mind kind of went a bunch of different directions all at once. I was thinking, okay, I got to text my customers and let them know I'm going on paternity leave this weekend. I'm not going to be there on Monday. I should text Patrick, who's running the tech here at church. Hey, do you have any? Yes, woo, Patrick, as he is today. I got to ask him, is there any questions, anything I can do last minute before I check out and have this baby? I got to text my family, and I got to text her family to let them know what's going on and to keep them updated throughout everything so they know everybody's safe, everybody's healthy. Oh, right, I'm becoming a dad, in a few hours. So at 5 p.m., they check us into our delivery room where we're going to meet our daughter for the first time. And guys, at 6 p.m., I had a slice of Domino's pizza in my mouth and a plate of loaded, cheesy bacon Domino's, chicken things on the plate in front of me. It was one thing for me to say, even over and over again, that my diet's going to be really important for me. It's going to be a priority when we have this baby. But once we got into that situation and I was feeling the circumstance and the pressures that came with it, my actual actions in the moment, they proved me wrong. They showed that there was actually a few other things that were a little more important to me than eating a healthy meal, and that kind of slid off of my priority list altogether. I think that type of experience is something that a lot of us can relate to. Can you relate to that in maybe a fitness or a health way like me? Or maybe for some of us, you can relate to that financially, where you've set up a budget in the past, or you have a savings goal, or want to pay off some debt, but then you get into life and circumstances of life, and your phone breaks, or your friends invite you out for dinner, or you go a little crazy buying Christmas gifts this year, and then your budget's out the window for the month. It's one thing for us to say that something is a priority and important for us, but our real actions and choices can often prove us wrong. And in as much as we do that to ourselves, I think a lot in life, what I actually want to share about this morning is how we can do that as Christians, as followers of Jesus, so easily with how we love other people. It's one thing for us as Christians to say that we have a lot of love for other people, and maybe we feel that we have a lot of love for other people, but I think our bank statements can prove us wrong a lot of times. What I mean by that is, if we were to hire an outside consultant who didn't know us to come in to Fireside and look at our bank statements, and based on that information alone, based on our spending alone, create a list of what is important to us, what would that look like? I think for a lot of us, the things that they would identify as important based on our spending would be maybe our car company, a comfortable place to live, maybe a credit card company or our bills or hobbies or sports. Are we generous enough as followers of Jesus that based on our spending alone, loving other people would make it onto our list of priorities? A lot of the time, our actual spending right now would show that we have a whole lot of love for ourselves, and we probably don't think about other people that much. That's not our intention. I'm not saying that. That's not our intention as Christians. And I know that's not your intention, Fireside. I know you. I spend time with you. I know you very well. And I see that you have a lot of love for each other, for our community, for the Lord. I see that in the way that we worship together. I see that in the way that we spend time together, do life together during the week. And I see that in the way that we reach out and love our community. I think the problem comes from, the problem is that not that we don't care about others or don't have love. I think the issue for a lot of us is that we just feel our budgets are pretty tight, and we just don't have as much to give as we would like to. So what do we do? If you can relate at all to this conundrum, what do we do about this? Well, God, thankfully, and with all of our topics, has addressed this in the Bible. And he takes this topic head on. And his answer is pretty blunt. He says the answer for us as followers of Jesus is that we need to give now. We need to give now. Now listen, I know that this alone is not actually very helpful to us, but stay with me, because God also shows us both why it's so important for us as Christians in our circumstances to be giving now, and he also helps us by showing us how. How do we do that? How do we do that emotionally? And practically, just what does that look like in our life? So stay with me. For our final series, in our series on generosity, we're going to be looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 8. We're going to start in verse 7, but before I read, I just want to help us out here, come together around some background about like what's going on here, because I'm going to jump right in the middle of a story. So 2 Corinthians is, it's a book in our Bible, but it's a letter, as you may know, that a man named Paul wrote to a group of Christians, a church in a city called Corinth. So you may recognize that from the name. This church in Corinth was a relatively wealthy church in kind of their whole surrounding area. And in this section, he's writing to them about a collection of money that he's taking up from a bunch of different churches that he's planning to give to the church that's in the city of Jerusalem, who's going through a really, really hard time, so he wants to help them. He talks about how he's already been to a bunch of other churches who have given a lot of money so far to the collection, and here specifically, he's encouraging them that now is the time for them to give. Because, interestingly enough, when the church in Corinth heard, when he first told them about the gift, I don't know, he may have told them first because of how wealthy they were. Anyway, when they heard about the gift, they were really excited to give. They told them, yes, we're going to give to this gift. But they haven't given any money yet, and a bunch of other churches have given money first. So let's see what he says to them about why now is the time to be giving. Let's read. He encourages them, since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love that we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. I'm not commanding you, but I want to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it with the earnestness of others. I want to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it with the earnestness of others. So why is it important to give now? Why does Paul say it's important? Well, he says it's by giving that he can test the sincerity of their love. What does that mean? Well, this word test here, originally when it was written, it can also mean like to prove something or to show something. And sincerity speaks to how real something is. So in other words, giving is how we show that our love is real. Paul says, people who love give. People who love give. To the point where you can look at somebody's giving, and that can show you a lot about how real their love actually is. That can show you a lot about how real their love actually is. And let me back up here. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for us. This word here, compared to others. Compared to others. Paul says like, hey, just so you know, I know how much they gave, and I'm going to see how much you give. So I'm going to know whose love is more real. based on your giving. For us in our culture, it's pretty normal for us to be pretty tight-lipped about our money, about what we make, about what we have saved, and about our giving. But here God seems to say, it can actually be good to have a little more accountability around our giving, where like in this case, it's a little more visible. So for that reason, and to follow in Paul's example, one thing we're going to be starting here at Fireside is called the giving sheet, where we've printed off the names of all our members. We've printed off how much we each give per month. And I just encourage you on the way out, pick up a sheet, just look through it. See where you stack up compared to the people around you and how much you give compared to people sitting next to you. I'm just kidding, we're not doing that. But did that make you really uncomfortable? Did that make you really uncomfortable? The idea that like everybody's gonna know how much I give? If so, that's exactly what God's trying to get us to feel in this verse. Paul's not saying, oh, so now we should go around bragging and comparing about how much we give to see who loves more, and I love more than you because I give more than you, and I should try and give more because I want to love as much as that person. That's not what he's saying, and that's actually the opposite of what Jesus teaches really clearly about giving. That's not the heart of this. What Paul is saying is basically this. If you would be ashamed or embarrassed for other people to know how much you give, then something needs to change. Let me say that again. If you would be embarrassed or ashamed for other people to know how much you give, then something needs to change. This is really uncomfortable because this is really exposing for us. It's prying our hearts open. Because he says, giving is how we show that our love is real. I think that for some of us, a lot of the times we can feel like, oh, following Jesus is just about what's on the inside. It's about what's out in the heart that counts. It's a faith thing. It's not about our works. It's not about what we do. That's legalism. That's not what Jesus teaches. Which is true. God cares most about our hearts and our faith and what's inside. That is true. But God says here very clearly, what we do matters. What we do matters a lot because what we do shows what's in our hearts. And what's uncomfortable is sometimes what we do, our actions seem to know our hearts better than we know our hearts. And the choices that we make can prove us wrong about what we think is in our hearts. That can be uncomfortable for us. People who love give. That's what he says. People who love give. He goes on to talk about how Jesus was the first one to give. In the very next verse, verse 9, he goes on, he says, "For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that through his poverty you might become rich." I'm sorry. He says, we can give now because Jesus gave first. We can give now because Jesus gave first. Jesus was rich and he gave until he was a poor man, it says. Jesus gave, like Ryan was talking about a couple weeks ago, Jesus gave when it hurt. Jesus gave everything that he had so that he could come near to you and so that he could offer you a gift that would make you richer than any amount of money in the world. And recognizing this is so important in answering the question, like, how do we do this? Because you might have been with me so far and you hear like, yes, I understand giving is so important. Being generous is so important because people who love give, and generosity, giving now is how we show that our love is real. But like, Paul, that doesn't actually help me in my situation. Knowing why it's important doesn't give me a raise. It doesn't pay off my bills. It doesn't pay off my debt. So how do I do this? And so when he goes and talks about Jesus' giving first, what he's doing is he's showing us and pointing us back to a new, powerful, rich identity that we have in Jesus. He says that through Jesus, we are rich. What does that mean? It means that through Jesus, we can have hope and meaning in this life. Through Jesus, we can have the God of the universe as a friend who loves us and who will provide for us because that's what he promised to do. Listen to me. If you know Jesus, if you abide in him daily, then you have received a rich, rich gift. What does that feel like? What does that type of richness feel like? Because it's one thing for us to say, like, yes, I know, because I have repented of my sins and I believe in the gospel and I trust Jesus, like he says that I'm rich, but I don't feel rich sometimes. Sometimes I feel pretty poor. So what does that type of richness from Jesus feel like? Well, it can feel like spending time with your kids or your grandkids and not having to have anxiety over their future because you know that Jesus loves them more than you ever could. And no amount of money can buy that peace. That's richness. It's like when you go on a walk outside and you see some squirrels and you see the blue sky and crunch the leaves and there's a thankfulness of spending time with the Lord and his creation. You can do that with $0 in your bank account, but that's richness. And it's a peaceful confidence about your future, even when your bank account looks pretty thin this month. Because you know that Jesus has promised that he will provide for you the things that you need in this life, and he will be with you and provide for you when this life is over, beyond when any amount of money can reach to help you. The more that we believe and accept our new rich identity in Jesus and because of Jesus, he says the more that will produce in us the natural desire to be generous while we are here in this world. And that's what happened in this story that we're reading about. Back up with me to the beginning of the chapter. This is the verse 1 of chapter 8. He starts actually by telling them about another poor church that's already given to this gift. He says, "And now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given in the Macedonian churches," who were poor churches. It says, "In the midst of a very severe trial," even though they're going through a hard time, "their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity." And they exceeded our expectations. They gave more than we thought they would because they gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and then by the will of God also to us. Look at that. Because they gave themselves first of all to the Lord, because they trusted him, and they had a rich new identity in him, they were able to joyfully give generously, even though it looked like they were poor. We can give now because Jesus gave first. We can give now because Jesus gave first. So what does this look like for us? What does God say this is to look like for us? Because that's what it looked like for them. But for us, how do we know, does God expect or ask us to give a percentage of what we make? Or does he want us to give a dollar amount? Or as Christians, should we just be giving anytime we see or hear of a need to just try and completely meet that need? Practically, how do we know what to do? Well, God says that we can answer that question. We can know how much to be generous with by asking ourselves, how much do I have to give? Look at what he says. A couple verses down, this is verse 12. He says, "If the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have." So, what do you have to give? What do you have to give? Guys, I know this is simple stuff. It is simple stuff, and you might be thinking that it's obvious. But God knows that we need to hear this because so often we fall into scarcity mindset. We focus on what we don't have and what we're not able to do, and that can keep us from giving at all, right? We do this with other things too. It's like when I roll over and wake up 15 minutes late for the gym, and I look at the time and I say, man, it's not even worth going anymore. I roll over and go back to sleep. It's like, if I had just gotten up, I'd be able to get up and get 45-minute workout in. But because I focused on what I missed, that kept me from doing anything at all. And we do this with our giving and generosity too, don't we? I'm not making that much money yet. I'm only working part-time. My family expenses are so high. I just don't have anything to give, right? We focus on what we can't do, and that immobilizes us and keeps us from giving anything at all. But the Lord challenges us. He says, flip that script. Ask, what do you have to give? What do you have to give? That's so important. What do you have to give now? Sorry. liking a little bit. He says, what do you have to give now? If you're with me and you're wondering, I hear you and I'm ready to give, where does God want me to give? Then I will tell you that the local church, if you're here, a member here, Fireside Church, or your church where you come from, is far and away the best place to start our giving and for the bulk of our giving to be. I'll tell you why. If you're a member here, you come here, you bring your time, your energy, your talents, your skills to participate in worship, to take care of each other, and to bring the gospel into our community. God also wants us to bring our gifts of money here. Why? To participate in worship, to take care of each other, and to bring the gospel into our community. Being a member of a church is about bringing all of who we are to be a part of a community that does life together. And part of who we are is our gift of money too. Everything that we do, we're able to do because of our giving. We pay for our merch, I guess, but we don't sell anything to make a profit. So if you look around you, everything about this worship gathering, our space, our equipment, it's because of our giving. Fireside Church is able to provide a living for Josh and Will and their families who work so hard because of our giving. And if you've attended a community event like Oktoberfest, we had our spot, we had our prizes, we had our activities because of our giving. And we want to do more of all this stuff, right? We want to have more worship gatherings and plant more churches and have more pastors and reach our community with the gospel in more and new ways. So that's why it's so important that we give now through our church and together. We want to be known as a radically generous group of people within our community. So friends, let's follow in the footsteps of Jesus by asking what we have to give now. People who love give. Giving is how we show that our love is real, and we can give now because Jesus gave first. Let's follow in his footsteps and be radically generous within our community and together because of the one who has been radically generous to us. Guys, let's pray.